While Margaret Thatcher will be remembered for her political legacy as Prime Minister for 11 years, many leaders have been highlighting the Christian values she stood for as a committed believer. Baroness Thatcher, who grew up in the Methodist Church, died of a stroke at the age of 87. Lord William Carey, who was the Archbishop of Canterbury during her time as Prime Minister, said Margaret Thatcher's Christian faith underpinned everything she stood for as a leader, which was epitomised in her famous speech when she quoted from St Francis of Assisi.
Well, she was a very explicit Christian. I mean, in that famous statement, Francis of Assisi, she was actually saying, these are the values I want to live my life by, you know. She had attended services. She was a very faithful Christian, brought up as a Methodist. I think she was open to all traditions in the Protestant tradition, and she was a very faithful person of prayer as well.
Baroness Caroline Cox, now a well-known campaigner on behalf of the persecuted church, remembers the time she was summoned to number 10 Downing Street by Margaret Thatcher to be told that she was being recommended to become a peer in the House of Lords.
I had no idea why I was there. And she said, well, I'm preparing a list of recommendations to be given to Her Majesty the Queen for life peerages. May I have your permission to put your name on that list for recommendation for the House of Lords? Well, I was glad I was sitting down, because I would certainly have fallen down with amazement if I'd not been sitting down. But then what was really impressive was she said, you know, you've always got freedom to speak and vote according to conscience.
Baroness Cox also believes Margaret Thatcher was driven by her Christian principles, particularly when she was campaigning for Christianity to be taught in schools.
I think she was very clear in those Christian values. One of the areas where I was active in the 1980s was trying to bring Christianity, the teaching of our Christian heritage, back into the teaching of religious education in our schools. And I think I had a lot of support in the House, and I think Margaret Thatcher gave me a lot of personal support.
For 15 years, Harvey Thomas directed missions in the UK for Billy Graham, before serving as Margaret Thatcher's Press and Public Relations Director from 1978 to 1991. Thomas, who miraculously survived a terrorist bombing attack in 1984 that was meant for Baroness Thatcher, says she was a giant among politicians and statesmen.
She didn't mind a good argument any time, but she knew what she believed in, and that's what she set out to do. And that's what put her above many other politicians, even of her own age, and certainly above the vast majority today, who have no idea what they want to do. And if they did, they wouldn't know how to do it.
Thomas says despite the pressures she faced, she never compromised her Christian principles.
I think the thing that she said to me most of all in, 13 and a half, nearly 14 years, was, no, we've got to do it this way because it's right. Now, whether she was or not, people have the right to judge, and history will judge. But her motivation was because she believed it was the right thing to do, and that's why she did it. Now, that came from her Christian faith.
Thomas says even Ronald Reagan told him he was inspired by the legacy Margaret Thatcher was creating for Great Britain, which continues to have an impact on society today.
He said, you know, what I want to do in the United States is what Margaret Thatcher's starting to do in the United Kingdom, to get the government off the backs of the people. And basically that was a big theme behind. Let the people be independent. Let them have something to leave to their children, hence the sale of council houses. Let there be not just strikes anywhere, but proper democratic processes in the trade unions, hence the trade union reform processes. Let the government not pay unnecessary bills for people laying about doing nothing, hence the privatisation programmes.
And her strong belief in God and her adherence to Christian values inspired her policies. Lord Carey suggests it was her commitment to those universal truths that left a lasting impact on Great Britain and led to the end of the Cold War. He says despite his sadness at her passing, he is reassured that her quality of life is now far greater in heaven.
Well, I feel a sense of sadness because she was a great leader, but her mind was going. No one could actually regret she's passed away. There was no quality of life left, sadly. So we as Christians believe that when we die, we're with the Lord, and that we take for granted. That is where she is.
So as the country pays their respects during Margaret Thatcher's funeral taking place in St Paul's Cathedral today, many will remember that unlike many of those who succeeded her, she refused to bend and compromise those beliefs which helped make Great Britain great. Peter Wooding for CBN News, London, England.